Have you ever found yourself just staring at a verb chart, feeling completely and utterly lost? Or, have you had that amazing moment where a phrase in another language just clicks? Yeah, learning a new language is a journey we can all relate to, full of those highs and lows. But what's really going on inside our brains when we do it? Okay, let's get into it.
And that right there is the big question, isn't it? It's what we're tackling in this explainer. We're going to unpack the incredible science of what's called second language acquisition to figure out how we go from knowing nothing to, well, feeling like a pro. It's a journey through some of the biggest ideas in linguistics and psychology, so let's get started.
And our journey begins with the most fundamental question of all. Is language something we're born with, or is it something we have to build from the ground up? This is the classic nature versus nurture debate, and believe me, it's the foundation for everything we're about to discuss.
So, in this corner, we have the two heavyweight contenders. On one side, you've got B.F. Skinner and his theory of behaviorism. He basically saw language as just another habit. You imitate what you hear, you get a thumbs up for it, and you repeat. Simple enough, right? But then, Noam Chomsky came along and completely blew that idea out of the water. He pointed out that kids say things all the time they've never heard an adult say, so how could it just be imitation? Chomsky argued it had to be something way deeper, an innate human instinct.
Chomsky called this instinct the language acquisition device, or LAD. The best way to think about it is like a pre-installed operating system in our brains. It's not loaded with English or Japanese, but with what he called universal grammar, the fundamental principles, the basic building blocks for any human language. It's the reason a child born anywhere in the world can learn any language they're exposed to. The blueprint is already there.
Okay, so those early theories were all focused on what's happening inside our heads, in isolation. But that can't be the whole story, can it? I mean, language isn't a solo mission. It's all about connecting with other people, which leads to a really important question. What if it's not just about the wiring in our brains, but about who we're actually talking to?
And that question leads us right into the interactionist theories. These ideas argue that we don't learn language in a vacuum. Nope, we learn it by actually using it, by interacting with other human beings. It's in that messy, real back and forth of a conversation that the real learning magic happens.
A perfect example of this, and one of the most famous ideas in the field, is Stephen Krashen's concept of comprehensible input. He came up with this brilliant formula, I+1. The I stands for your current level, what you already know. The +1 is new stuff that's just a tiny bit beyond your grasp, but that you can figure out from the context of the conversation. That little zone right there, that's the sweet spot. That's where natural, effortless learning really kicks in.
But is just listening and understanding enough? Well, a researcher named Meryl Swain said, not quite. She developed what's called the output hypothesis. As this quote gets at, her big idea was that it's the act of producing language, of trying to speak or write, that really forces our brains to get serious and grapple with the rules. When you try to say something and you just can't find the words, you suddenly realize, oh, there's a gap in my knowledge. Speaking is how you actually test your theories about how the language works.
So, as we're taking in all this new information and trying our best to speak and write, something pretty incredible starts to happen. We're not just making a bunch of random mistakes. We are in fact building our own, personal, one-of-a-kind version of the language. And yes, there's a name for it. It's called interlanguage. Now, it's super important to get this. Interlanguage isn't broken English or bad French. It's its very own logical, rule-based system that is constantly changing and evolving. Think of it as this amazing, dynamic bridge between your native language and the language you're learning. Every single learner on the planet has one. Which, of course, brings us to the question, the one we've all agonized over. What about all the mistakes? The weird grammar, the goofy pronunciations? Are they just signs that we're feeling? Well, the modern answer to that is a huge, resounding no. In fact, the way we see errors today is a total game changer. They aren't failures. They are incredibly valuable clues. They give us a direct window into a learner's brain, showing us exactly how they're trying to build a system and make sense of all this new information.
And we can even classify these clues. Look at this table. Intralingual errors are when your native language interferes. So in Spanish, you say, tengo 25 años, which literally means, I have 25 years. A learner might just translate that directly. Then you have intralingual errors. These happen within the new language. Like when a learner figures out you add ed for the past tense in English and then applies that rule everywhere, saying, I good to the store. You see, it's not random. It's the brain logically trying to figure out a system. It's actually kind of brilliant. All right, so we've got the brain's universal blueprint. We've got social interaction and conversation, but now we get to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this one is different for every single one of us. This is the personal X factor.
This is where your own feelings and your psychology come into play. I mean, think about it. Why are you learning? Is it for a new job or because you fell in love? How nervous do you get when you actually have to speak? Do you deep down believe you can actually do this? Even your personality plays a huge role. Are you a risk taker, willing to jump in and make mistakes? All of these emotional factors can totally change the speed and success of your journey.
And speaking of motivation, it's not just one simple thing. This model from Zoltan Dernier is fantastic because it breaks it down. Your motivation is really a mix of three things. First, your ideal L2 self. That's the fluent, amazing, dream version of you as a speaker. Then there's your ought to L2 self. That's the person you feel you should be, maybe for your boss or your family. And finally, there's the actual learning experience itself. A fun, positive classroom can be just as motivating as any big future goal.
So what's the bottom line here? When you put it all together, you realize that learning a language isn't about finding one single magic bullet. It's a really complex dance between the universal grammar wired into our brains, the conversations we have with others, the unique interlanguage we build for ourselves, and our own personal psychology. All of those pieces have to work together. Which brings me to the final thought I want to leave you with. Now that you've seen the science behind it all, what does it mean for you? Maybe it's about finding more of that I+1 input. Or maybe it's about reframing your mistakes not as failures, but as clues. Or maybe it's just about reconnecting with that dream version of yourself as a speaker. The real takeaway is that understanding how we learn is the first step to learning better. So, what will you change?